Hello, true believers. This is Hank Garner.
This is M.A. Phipps.
Hey, this is Eamon Ambrose.
This is Justin Sloan, and you're listening to
30-minute author interviews
with my buddy,
Preston Lay.
Woohoo! Welcome, everybody, to this very first episode of 2017. I decided to do something a little different for y'all for this episode. I'm going to be doing 3 different interviews on this episode, and we're going to be talking with each of our reviewers for about 10 or 15 minutes apiece. And so right now we're going to talk with Michael David Anderson. How you doing today, Michael?
Doing pretty well. How about you?
Not too bad. For those that might not know who you are, why don't you kind of give everybody a bio on who you are?
Well, I am a suspense thriller horror novelist, first and foremost. I have 2 novels out called Teddy and Wake, and horror is sort of my specialty. So originally I came on intending to do like more horror reviews for Leighgendarium. That being said, I haven't necessarily been sticking to that as much as people were thinking I might. But I've also been trying my hand at trying to expand, how many reviews we have too, as far as like doing more movie reviews as well as just books, and then looking at both independent releases as well as, of course, mainstream too.
Yep. That is right. And he's so most of the movie reviews done so far have been done by you, and they've all been well done so far.
Thank you.
What's something about you that many people might not know about you?
Well, outside of being a novelist, I also do comedy on the side, which when people hear I'm a horror novelist and then I say I do stand-up comedy, they're like, this doesn't compute. This doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But here, I live in Knoxville, Tennessee. I'm actually part of the local comedy scene here. A couple years back, I was actually a finalist in the Old City Comedy Competition.
Wow.
And that's the thing. Like, I sort of look at comedy as a more immediate way of getting feedback on my writing, even if it's not in the same genre as what I normally write. And I found that doing comedy has actually helped me with my writing because I'm able to, explore beats a little bit more specifically and tighten up my writing in certain ways. And doing comedy is a much more immediate feedback to see how well that works. So it's actually been quite a help to me in a lot of very unexpected ways.
And you did I don't know how many people know about it. You helped do a comedy fundraiser for the fire victims in the Gatlinburg fire. How did that show go? And did y'all raise a good bit for the people there in Gatlinburg?
We actually did a benefit at a place called Club 1341 in Sevierville. And they put it together in like 3 days. Wow. So like, the fires happened, predominantly on Monday of that week and around Wednesday. Another local comic, Alex Stokes, who has actually come out with books himself. They're just comedy-based books and whatnot. He ended up working with Club 1341 and figuring it out. And over the course of 3 days, pretty much they put together the benefit show. And it was both comics and musicians. And I ended up doing about a 10-minute set. And I'm from Sevier County originally, so I had a vested interest in making sure it's like, yes, I definitely want to be on the show. This is like my backyard. I definitely want to be a part of this. So it was definitely a good night. We ended up raising over $1,300 to go toward proceeds for, helping the victims.
That is very awesome. So kind of talking about 2016 a little bit, what were some of your favorite books? I guess let's start off. If you had to pick a number one, your number one favorite book of 2016, what would that book be?
It would be The Fireman by Joe Hill, which for those of you who do not know who Joe Hill is, he is actually Stephen King's son, which he actually writes in the same genre. He writes predominantly horror, but his brand of horror is a little bit different than his father's too. Like you can see the influences there from obviously growing up in Stephen King's household, but at the same time, like he has a slightly different flavor to his writing. And I know in his short stories, for instance, it seems like his shorts can also be a little bit darker than King's, especially the newer stuff. But as far as, the Fireman goes, as far as like the writing and how well the story worked, it easily blew my expectations away. I had been looking forward to it for a while, especially having enjoyed his other books like Nosferatu and Horns, which is adapted into a film starring Daniel Radcliffe. But The Fireman easily surpassed anything he had done to this point so far.
What was it for you that puts it as his favorite story that he's written for you? Well,
a lot of it is just how well the different elements of the book work. One of the things that he said up front, for instance, in the acknowledgments at the front of the book was, if it hadn't been for reading the works of J.K. Rowling, he wouldn't have been able to write this. And you stop and think, and you're like, wait a second, what does reading the writer of Harry Potter have anything to do with horror novel? And the thing is, like, while it didn't feel like, a Harry Potter novel or anything along those lines, you could see like the influence at different points, because essentially if you look at Harry Potter, for instance, there's very much a sense of like community and the inner workings of, how these groups interact with others and whatnot. So it's a very microcosm of, social interactions. And that's something that Joe Hill does in this book. Essentially, the concept of the novel is that a disease called dragon scale is spreading across the world. And what happens with dragon scale is you're marked with these kind of scales on your skin that, have like gold flecks and whatnot. And they're beautiful to look at. But along with those, your internal body temperature rises. And, over time, if you don't know how to, stay calm and, essentially be at peace with the dragon scale, people actually spontaneously combust. And as a result, like the world is pretty much on the brink of, societal breakdown, because entire cities are going up in flames from where people are just spontaneously combusting. But the thing is, like, whereas other novels, would have taken like a more worldly approach, this book actually looks at it from like a very small perspective, and you just hear about the things going on in the world around. So it follows a young lady, Harper, who becomes pregnant at the very beginning of the novel and then is infected with dragon scale. So she's determined to try to survive so she can have her baby. And she ends up actually being involved in a community of other people at dragon scale. And the time that she spends in this community, especially as things, further break down and everything, you see the influences of J.K. Rowling's work and just how like they dole out punishment or how they try to conform. And it's very interesting how it actually ultimately all worked.
Gotcha. And, I know that Joe Hill had a graphic novel series, Lock and Key. Do you think you could see The Fireman ever being turned into a graphic novel, or do you think it would make a good kind of like how Hulu did 11/22/63 of Stephen King? Do you think it could make a good maybe one-time series?
It's possible. My only thing about it is they would need like a very large budget to pull it off. Like 11/22/63 by Stephen King. Like, yeah, there was a lot of budget involved in it just because it was a period piece set predominantly in the 60s. But at the same time, the level of devastation that you see in The Fireman would essentially need a budget more like a large budget film in order to be able to pull it off. Because when he describes like some of the scenes that are in the book where you've got like widespread devastation from fires and whatnot, you can't pull that off with just, simple, dressing here and there, and do it right. And let's face it, like, yeah, they could probably do like some basic CGI work and probably pull off the effect, but you're going to lose the essence and the scope of what the book is capable of.
Gotcha. What would be a number 2 favorite for you for this year?
The Fireman kind of stood above all the other books so much that it's hard to pick out a number 2. Probably some of the better ones that I ended up reading this year, though, ended up I'd say I'm going to go back and forth between Jeffrey Deaver and actually Thomas A. Farmer's book, The Week the World Ended. For Jeffrey Deaver, I'd say The Skin Collector would actually be the main one I looked at. I read 2 of his books this year, that and The Kill Room. I'll start with Deaver, though. For those of you who don't know who Deaver is, he's actually the author of the Lincoln Rhyme series, which the first book, The Bone Collector, was actually made into a film starring Denzel Washington and Angelina Jolie, I think around like 1998, 1999, something like that. But essentially it follows Lincoln Rhyme, who was a crime scene investigator, really good with forensics, who becomes a quadriplegic when a beam falls on him at a crime scene while he was investigating it. So it's interesting because it's got like this very I wouldn't call it Sherlock Holmes-esque procedural quality to it, because he can't make just like solid deductions just from observing people or, their environment, but he can do the same thing with literally trace evidence and be able to figure things out. And the novels are really good at being able to establish sideways thinking, essentially. Like they'll actually build all these details and you'll think, okay, this is leading in this one direction. I see where this is going. And then all of a sudden he takes an abrupt right turn and it's something else. And then when you look at the evidence, it actually makes perfect sense to where he just took the story. And I always know there's going to be an interesting twist, but it's rare that I can figure it out. And then half the time, if I do figure out a twist, it turns out that's just what he wanted you to think. And then it goes in another direction. So he'll actually play with your expectations on that. So it's really well done. The Skin Collector is sort of a spiritual successor to The Bone Collector. And it's about a killer who essentially tattoos poison on his victims while they're unconscious. And it's so concentrated that it usually kills them within 15, 20 minutes. And it's agonizing pain that they go through. He doesn't actually take their skin as, trophies or anything. His trophies are essentially leaving his mark on them. So that's how he collects them, is by finding, victims with, flawless skin and then leaving his mark on them. And then that's his legacy.
What book are you currently reading right now?
I'm currently reading Dance of Dragons by George R.R. Martin, which means because I was kind of late to the Ice and Fire series. I didn't read them until shortly before I started writing for Leighgendarium. Then I took pretty much most of this year off from that series to read other things. But his books, for me, like some people can fly through them. They are very much like you kind of have to chew your way through the book. So I take my time with those. So I might end up reviewing like smaller, like short stories in the interim while I'm reading this, because it might take me a while to get through. But that's the thing, like Martin has a way of, his books are like long, but, his prose has a way of moving fairly quickly. He gives essentially minimalistic detail to certain things and then a lot of detail to other things. And he's very good at looking at, social relationships more than anything, it seems. So on that, he does a pretty good job, but I'd say I feel like I pay a lot more attention in my scenes to like little details, whereas he is just like, all right, I'm going to gloss over these things and just imply that this is what's going on. So it's definitely interesting. And as a writer, whenever you read somebody else's work and it's totally different from your own, you start picking up little nuances of, okay, so how am I going to incorporate something from this writer as far as like how to better myself as a writer. So it's always interesting to, read someone who writes a totally different style than what you do.
Gotcha. And have there been any authors that you just discovered this year, whether they're a new author or they're an old author and you've never read them before? Have there been any authors that really just grabbed your attention this year?
I didn't read too many new authors this year. Thomas A. Farmer is probably going to be the main one. His book, The Week the World Ended, was a very interesting look at I wouldn't call it an alien invasion, because they're essentially a race that has been hiding, it seems, under the Earth's surface for, thousands of years, waiting to retake the planet. but it's it kind of does like how The Fireman did. It kind of looks at a very small scale look of what the world looks like as everything is breaking down society wise. And I thought it was actually a really good work for an independent author, especially for their first novel.
And is he working on a second one now?
I don't believe he's working on a sequel to it at this point, although I think he has ideas for it. He's actually working on a new novel called Apollo. And I think he's looking at trying to have it out sometime later in 2017.
Okay. Well, normally I ask the authors a certain question at the end of each episode about a penguin, but I'm going to ask you a different one instead to end on. I'm going to ask you what song best describes you and why.
Oh, no. Oh, man. That kind of changes from day to day.
Now, today, what song best describes you?
Oh, man. You kind of caught me off guard there because I was not expecting that whatsoever. And that's the thing. I listen to so much different music that it kind of goes back and forth. There's actually probably a song that's kind of come back to me again and again over the years. It came out when I was in high school, and it kind of, describes my moods quite a bit, and I kind of come back to the song a lot, and it kind of changes over time, how I kind of look at it, how it applies. But I'd say like Mad Season by Matchbox 20 actually is a good one for me for different reasons, depending on like what part of my life I'm in. Okay. Just because, the world is crazy, and, it's like people, my interactions with them can sometimes change. And I feel like that song, kind of encapsulates that idea. It's just like, what, sometimes I come undone, but you're supposed to understand that. And that's kind of what I get from that song. So especially when I'm working on a novel and I'm just like looking at the blank sheet of paper or the blank word processor going, all right, I know what's supposed to come next, but I can't find the words. Give me a minute. Right. I'm losing my mind here. Just give me a minute. I would say that's probably going to be a good encapsulation. It's not necessarily most indicative of what I listen to as much per se these days, but I'd say as far as like over the years, I'd say that song always comes back. Okay.
Sounds good. Well, thank you for taking some time out of your day and coming on this special episode of 30-Minute Author Interviews. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
Right now, I've got with us Carol Kean. How you doing tonight?
Hey, doing good. How are you, Preston?
Doing pretty good. For those that might not know who you are, why don't you kind of tell our listeners who you are and kind of what you do?
I'm a book critic for perihelion science fiction, which was started up a few years ago after the two guys who created this science fiction magazine in college in the 1960s had their careers and retired. And then Sam Bellato said, hey, let's revive our magazine. So they did. So I've always been drawn to science and to fiction. So science fiction combines both passions. And so that's my main thing, is that I write 1 or 2 book reviews and the occasional rant or rave. Sam's very indulgent. He asked me to. I was like, Sam, why are you asking me to write some nonfiction essay for perihelion? Like, because he likes to read them. Like, wow. So I'll go on about stuff like there's way too much dystopian post-apocalyptic science fiction out there. There's too much fantasy in my science fiction and whatever else I'm ranting and raving about. So I was like, hey, I get the little masthead with the name book critic next to it. Yep. Now it gets even better because Leighgendarium, there's another masthead, and you do this superlative job of not only getting book reviewers to read and review a variety of different books from every genre, except, of course, your certain ones that you don't review, which I don't review either. And then you let everybody know, hey, we've got a new interview up by Chris Fried today. Yeah. Or whatever. It shows up in the social media feeds, Twitter and Facebook. And I just found out tonight you're on Instagram too, but I haven't gotten very much farther with that. I only just discovered how to get onto Instagram minutes before you. contacted tonight.
That sounds good. Where did you get your love for reading from?
I grew up on a farm, and I left the house maybe once a week to go to church. We had animals around, and I did have 4 sisters, but we fought all the time. And, I played with them, and then I'd had enough of the commotion, and I'd just go crawl into an armchair with a book. And I don't know, I had my mom's side of the family. They were storytellers. So, but it's like I tease my husband. I read in Willa Cather, one of her novels, nothing much happens in Nebraska except the weather. Because he's from Nebraska. And it's like, well, and nothing much happened growing up on this farm in the Midwest for me, except whatever books I read. Those were my best friends. They were reliable. They were there. It's like, wow, I'm home alone on a Saturday afternoon because everybody else went to town without me. But hey, I'm not alone. I've got a book to read, whether it was Peter Pan or whether it was Zane Grey in later years or whoever.
Do you have a favorite book from your childhood that you still read occasionally today?
Well, if you go younger, it'd be The Secret Garden, Frances Hodgson Burnett, where this little orphan girl is sent to England to go live with this crabby old uncle who really wants nothing to do with her. And then she discovers she has a cousin she didn't even know existed, and he's a hypochondriac. And then she meets this little boy from Yorkshire who wanders around the meadow with his various wild animals in tow, Dickon. And it's just an enchanting little tale. Loved it, read it many, many times. And as I got a little bit older, there's something like a fairy tale, like a Cinderella story set in the Old West. It's got Butch Cassidy, and it's got a girl who's a lonely little bookworm, and she's also orphaned more or less and raised by an aunt, which is my mom's story. So I read that book, I kid you not, probably 20 times. And it's embarrassing because I've given copies of it to many people when I can find an old out-of-print copy. And everybody hates it.
Really?
There's like 3 people on the planet. I discovered one by accident. And then it turns out that she's actually the niece, that the author of this book was her great aunt. She met this woman in person. And then I found out this woman, the author that I loved so much, died in like 1990. I could have written her a letter. I could have met her in person. But this was before the internet, before social media.
Yeah.
I didn't even think to go tracking people down. I thought you'd have to be like a private eye to go track down who's Ardith Kennelly. Does she still live in Utah? How would I find her? How would I get a letter off to an author?
Right. So where did you get your interest for science and sci-fi? Because you went from Secret Garden to now really liking science fiction. When did that happen?
Well, I always had a love of science. I was just always asking questions. Why this? How that? And my parents said, you'd better get a really good job someday if you ever figure out answers to all these questions you ask. I was like, yeah. Yeah, well, I did get accepted into nursing school when I was 19, and he said, you can't do that. You're a malpractice suit just waiting to happen. I was like, yeah, okay. So much for my high-paying job and going into medicine. I wanted to do the coroner for a police department because when I was about 16, I found this book when DNA was still in its infancy, and it was about all these forensic DNA clues to solve crimes. And again, thanks to the internet, years later, I found a copy of it. All of these obscure out-of-print books from my childhood are turning up on eBay or bookfinder.com. And it's like, whoa, this makes my day. So I've got a copy of Crime and Science.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever heard of Bookfinder. I might have to look into that website.
Oh, heavens. Bookfinder.com.
Huh. Okay.
If it's not on Amazon, go to Bookfinder. I have gotten so many obscure books. There was one, a guy told me that he could never find. I found it.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's about a pilot who flew into a thunderstorm and survived it.
Oh, okay.
Which is almost unheard of. Yeah.
Right. So looking back at 2016, what was... And this will be kind of hard, but what's maybe one of your favorite books that you read in 2016?
I can never pick just one, but because you told me to, I'm going to be a good girl. Joe Ide, I-D-E. I had never heard of him before. He's of Asian descent, which surprised me because when I first started reading it, because it's about a Sherlock Holmes kind of character, but he's this really young black guy. Isaiah, his last name starts with a Q, so his initials are IQ. And the guy keeps using observation and powers of deduction. And he ends up, because early in the novel, his brother dies and their parents are already dead. And he ends up with this roommate, and it's hilarious. They're comic relief. The roommate is always in trouble, always putting him up to, let's make an easy buck. And so they end up breaking and entering. Now, mind you, I cannot stand thieves. My bicycle was stolen from me in college, and suddenly I realized why they used to cut off hands of thieves, because if I found whoever stole my bike, I would have chopped off his feet myself. And so here these guys are breaking and entering, and I'm thinking, why am I liking this story? It's full of profanity and full of horrible violence. Mm-hmm. It had everything going against it. All the things that I avoid when I look at the daily news feeds of books out there to read. You know, it's a whodunit, it's a thriller, it's a police procedural, and it's got violence and bloodshed and profanity from the first page. Why did I love it? It's funny. Joe Ide knows how to really tell a good story and make people laugh. There are so many characters in that book that had me just laughing out loud.
Okay, so since you said you can never pick just one, what would be your second?
Well,
I can never pick just two.
No, I can't. Because, okay, just as Joe Ide's novel is said to have people optioning it for film rights, there's another one, and it's called Squall, and it's by Sean Costello, who's actually a surgeon. He's an anesthesiologist up in Canada, and he's 60. And so he writes this book, and it reminds me of Pulp Fiction. And it's funny because somebody like BookBub or whoever categorized it in Christian fiction by accident. And so this poor author has a slew of 1- and 2-star bandits teaming up saying, this is not a Christian novel. There's profanity on the first page. 1 star. Like, why does Amazon allow these reviews to affect the ratings? It pulls down.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not just, it's one thing to post the review, but this number system. This is the worst part of being a reviewer, is putting a number on something and then seeing an author's ratings get pulled down by people who put numbers on things for the wrong reasons. Mm-hmm. And it's like they're sabotaging it. And that's how the phrase 1-star bandit got started. There are people who download free books routinely and then just have fun trying to sound really smart. I think they're all trying to channel Dorothy Parker. Dorothy Parker is that famous book reviewer who was a contemporary, I think, of Hemingway. Uh-huh. And it's like, she wasn't even a good book reviewer. She didn't even hardly talk about the book. She just made fun of the author. She was smart. She was brilliant. She's one of the most quoted women in history. But I think these 1-star bandits are trying to be funny now, too. It's like after that TV show House came out, I was in a fiction workshop, and some guy said horrible things to me. And I said, why are you in this fiction workshop? He goes, oh, don't mind me. I'm just channeling House. I was like, well, go channel House with your drinking buddies on a Friday night and get out of the fiction workshop because you're not funny.
That's right. That's why I do. That's why I do a 10-star system. At the Leigendarium, because I feel like I kind of look at when I do book reviews as giving kind of a grade, like in school. So to me, a 4-star review on Amazon is like getting an 80. In school. So
where's the 90%? Where's the 4.5-star option?
Right. So that's why I do the 10-star. So that way it's closer to it's easier to grade, like kind of in school. So that's why I do the 10-star for our blog. So that way. And
this sets you apart. This is one thing I love about the Leigendarium. I think the 10-star system is great, and more people should follow it.
Yeah, I think the lowest rating I've given, I gave a short story 3 stars. But I think the lowest rating on a book I gave this year was 6, I think it was.
And I have a tendency, if I can't rate it high enough, I pass over it in silence.
Right.
Especially if it's an indie author. If it's somebody as famous as Stephen King, then I'll figure, well, he's going to sell millions of books anyway. So I'll go ahead and say, by the way, Stephen King's latest isn't worth buying. Don't waste your money.
The the book I gave a 6-star wasn't an indie author; it was a published author. So
yeah, that's how I feel about it too. And even then, it's like, well, but there's so much subjectivity.
Yeah. So what book are you currently reading right now? Book or books? I don't know if you're one that reads more than one book at a time or not. I can't. But
you know what? I don't like to do that either.
Okay.
I might start 3 or 4 books in one day, but then the best book will win.
Okay.
My college professors would have 6 or 7 books going simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
But man, I can't do that because when I read, I enter that world. I become that person. And I can't just go from world to world like that. I've got to stay in that world and see it through to the end before I can move on to the next book. So right now, oh gosh, there's so many that I'm supposed to be reading, and I have such intense guilt that if you don't hook me on page 1 or keep me going through to the end of chapter 1, then it's like, oh, I got a new one in the mail today. Or usually it's email. Amazon Vine still sends paper copies. I don't know why. So this one is called Hover. It's about a woman helicopter pilot, and it's written by a woman who actually was a Navy helicopter pilot.
Okay.
Landing on a ship in the middle of the ocean.
So is it nonfiction or is it fiction?
Oh, it's a novel.
Okay.
Fiction.
Okay.
I typically prefer fiction. Not always, but usually.
Well, Carol, thank you for coming on and letting our readers get to know you a little bit better. We appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Preston.
Right now, we have joining us Chris Freed. Thanks for taking time out of your evening to come record with me.
Glad to do it, Preston. This is my first podcast that I've ever appeared on.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
Well, maybe you'll get on more after this, just the beginning.
You never know. Hopefully I won't mess it up.
Nah, you shouldn't. For those that might not know who you are or what you do, why don't you kind of give the people a little quick bio on who you are?
Okay. I'm a married father of 2. After I come home from my day job, I come home, spend time with my family, and when they all go to bed, I'm reading. Writing reviews.
I believe that because you read a bunch.
I do read a lot.
Are you a fast reader?
I am. I can typically do probably about a page a minute.
Okay.
Depending upon the size of the page and whatnot.
Okay. Makes sense. My wife can read I can't. I didn't start reading until after high school when I was in college. So I'm not very fast here. But my wife will be sitting in the bed next to me just flying through a book. She can read a book in, one day. But not me. I'm slow. So
I remember those days from before I had children.
Yeah.
I wish I could do a book a day now.
Yeah. So how many books do you read in a week right now?
Well, right now?
Yeah.
Oh, with the holidays, I haven't been able to read a whole lot at all.
Right.
Typically, I can read maybe a book in a week, a week and a half for a full-length novel.
Okay. When did you first get your love for reading? Do you remember?
Oh, it started when I was in my single digits.
Okay.
Way back when, like age 4 or 5 is when I just started reading, somewhere in there.
Do you have a favorite story from your childhood that you have passed down to your children or read to them when they were young?
I'm really kind of partial to the Charlie Brown comic strips.
Okay.
Peanuts related stuff.
Okay.
So I've really been sharing that with them, and all the different books that I've had from my childhood I'm sharing with them now. Some of them they look at and go, "Oh, Daddy, this is cool," and others like, pass.
That's funny. So what genre do you enjoy the most when you're reading for fun by yourself?
I mostly read science fiction.
Okay.
I dabble a little bit in horror here and there. And I'll mix it up with mysteries and thrillers.
Why science fiction? What made you gravitate towards science fiction?
I think I like the infinite possibility that the stories present. You don't know what you're going to get when you open a story in science fiction. Could be an allegory for real world. It could just be a pew pew shoot 'em up, There's just something that just stimulates the imagination in a well-written science fiction story.
Okay. I don't think I asked the others this, but since you brought up allegories for real world, when reading a book, do you try to find if the author is trying to deliver a certain message about a certain topic, or do you just kind of read it as entertainment?
I'll kind of process it on both levels.
Okay.
I'll read it as entertainment. If there's a deeper message, it usually comes from processing it after the fact. But I can appreciate it on both levels. Okay.
And as you said, you read a ton of books because you're putting up reviews weekly over at the Leighgendarium. So this question might be a little bit harder for you since you read so much. Is there an author, an indie author, published author, whoever, that you just discovered their works this year that you've become a huge fan of?
This year, I would have to say I discovered Anthony Vicino.
Okay.
Through, it was the Time Travel Chronicle, and through his short story there. And then after that, I went on to Time Heist, and wow, it just blew me away.
Isn't he working on the next one in that?
He is working on the sequel.
Okay.
It was supposed to be out in November, I think, but something must have happened because it never got released. I'm guessing he's just still working on it. I should probably message him and see what's going on there because I'm very curious.
So with all the authors that you have read, do you have a favorite author? And if so, what really makes them stand out above all others in your opinion?
It's very hard to pick favorites.
I know.
It's very hard. I like a lot of different authors for a lot of different reasons.
Okay. You want to share a couple of them?
I really like Anne Christie's thoughtful way of exploring a story and exploring characters and all the little details that she populates the story with. She thinks about it very carefully and puts it out there, and it makes me read that and go, wow, she's really doing this wonderful world building, and all these little details just really flesh out the picture that she's creating. So, and between her and Logan Snyder, who does dialogue like no other indie author that I can see, his dialogue in his books is so natural and heartfelt. It's powerful, and it's moving, and it's all embedded into a story that makes you want to keep turning the page.
I've read, I think, a couple Anne Christie shorts, and I really liked what I read. I don't think I've read any Logan Snyder, though. I know the name, and I believe I have maybe some of his stuff. I don't think I've read it yet.
I would encourage you to read Violet.
Okay.
Which is the story of an android come to life.
Okay.
And she falls in love with the man who saves her. And the two of them go on this wild adventure across the globe, trying to battle the corporation that created her. It's a little James Bond. It's a dash of romance, and he mixes it all up where you don't know where it's going next.
Okay, I'll have to see if I have that one in my Kindle or not.
I would also put out there, though I didn't discover him this year, Daniel Arthur Smith has a really wild imagination.
He does. I love his stories.
He does.
Did you ever read the, is it called The Cathari Treasure?
I haven't read it. I know it's an Indiana Jones kind of thing. I want to read it. I own it.
If you ever read like the Da Vinci Code,
I have read that.
It's along the lines of a Da Vinci Code kind of story.
I really want to read it, and geez, if my to read list wasn't so long, it gets reshuffled constantly.
Yeah, he was at the time of recording this is actually the night before his podcast episode airs, but he was our podcast episode last week, and we talk about that story and why it sold better over in England, better than it sold here in the United States. So You might want to read it after you hear that podcast episode.
I might want to. It's either going to be that or the Audible.
Yeah, I didn't listen to the Audible of it.
He reads it.
Does he really?
Yeah.
Hang on, I'm pulling this up now. I didn't know that he did that.
Yeah, he narrated it.
I had no idea. He didn't say that in the interview. I just discovered Audible. Like, I really started getting the audiobooks this year.
Mm.
So my audiobook collection is slowly growing. But I did not know. I didn't know that he read that one.
Yeah, I think he read a couple of his.
Here we go. The Audible. You can get it for $1.99.
Mm-hmm. He narrates Cathari.
He does. And
narrate. Opening Day and Agroland.
Wow.
Oh, wait, no, not Agroland. Potter's Daughter.
Agroland was out there for people that want a good kind of, I don't want to say zombie. Well, yeah, I guess zombie book kind of fits it. If you like zombie stories, you'll like Agroland. That one was a good one.
I do. Daniel is one of those authors that want to dig into his backlist.
Yeah.
And I have his backlist. I think I have pretty much every story that he's written, either in Audible or in Kindle. I just need more time.
Yeah.
I saw a great sign in front of a library that I passed by on the way to work. I posted it on Facebook, and it said, "Dear Santa, what I want for Christmas is more time to read."
I saw you put that. That's hilarious.
I was like, I want that for Christmas. Can somebody package that for me, please?
That's right. More time so I can read. That's exactly right. That's funny. If you could have dinner with any author, dead or alive, who would you choose and why?
I think I would say Brad Meltzer. I met him at BookCon at Javits Center 2 years ago. And, I've seen him host TV shows and I've read his books. He actually is a lawyer who just turned into an author. And not only does he write great mysteries, he is such a smart guy, and he has this way of looking at the world in his own way. And he's like emotional, and he's out there, and he's upfront, he's transparent. Like, he's not only a great author, he's a kind human being, and I would want to pick his brain.
Okay. So looking back on 2016, I know you have a couple of them because we sort of talked about them online. If you could pick your top story that you read in 2016 in any of the different categories that you had, which one would be your top pick for 2016?
Oh boy, I can't narrow it down to one. I can give you 5.
Okay. Let's do that. Let's run down your top 5.
Okay, my top 5. The best anthology of 2016, in my opinion. The Doomsday Chronicles.
I've heard great stuff. I haven't read that one yet. I've heard great stuff about
Oh my
it,
goodness. All of the chronicles are excellent, but this one is a couple of cuts above. It really scares the pants off you. Because you look at it and you're like, that could really happen.
Okay.
That really could happen. That might not happen, but it's still scary.
Right.
Giant insects? I'm really hoping not, but
Is there a story in that anthology that sticks out to you the most when you think about it?
Oh my goodness. My favorite Anne Christie story of all time is in that anthology.
Okay, which story did she do for that?
A Mother So Beautiful.
Okay, I haven't read that one yet.
It's her most psychologically complex and scary story that she's ever written. And she does darkness, but this is darkness.
Okay.
Oh, so twisted. I loved it. So, and then I have my 2 favorite science fiction stories of the year.
Okay.
I couldn't narrow it down because I like them both for different reasons.
Okay.
Control Alt Revolt by Nick Cole. Oh my goodness, I was laughing page after page, and if I wasn't laughing, my jaw was hanging open.
Now, that's the one that got him dropped from his book deal, right?
It is.
Okay, all right.
And you know what? I don't see the big deal in it.
I don't either. And for those that don't know, in the very first chapter, he has to come up with a reason on, and you can tell me if I'm wrong. He has to come up with a reason for why I think it's AI decides the human race needs to be demolished. And it's because there's a reality star that's kind of like a Kardashian that gets pregnant at her bachelorette party and decides that the baby's going to ruin her life and has an abortion. And the AIs say, well, if they would just ruin a life, kill a life because it's going to ruin their life, what would they do when they discover us? And so that's the reason why AI decides the human race needs to go. And because of that scene, they wanted him to change it and he wouldn't. And so he got dropped.
That's honestly, it's their loss because it's such a fantastic novel.
I have it. I haven't read it yet, but I have it.
Oh my goodness. You should put that at the top of your list, frankly.
Okay.
It's a rollicking science fiction video game action adventure.
Now, this one it's a prequel to Soda Pop Soldier, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Have you read his, is it Fight the Rooster?
I did. What a fantastic satire that was.
How does it compare to Fight the Rooster?
Fight the Rooster is a Hollywood comedy.
Okay.
Control Alt Revolt is science fiction doomsday scenarios, AI rising up to try to control the world. Okay. And the stakes get larger and larger as the story moves along, and they're searching for this one thing. And you think you know what that thing is, but you kind of kept guessing. Then when you finally discover what it is, you're like, that's brilliant. It's brilliant because when you see what it is, it's like, oh my goodness, it totally makes sense within the context of the novel. I was blindsided by it. It was the whole book was amazing, top to bottom. It really was. He's another one of those authors. I wish I had time to read his backlist. I have his backlist. I need to read it at some point.
Yeah.
Another amazing author.
Okay. What's your second science fiction book?
That would be Time Heist by Anthony Vicino.
Okay, I have that on my list as well to read.
The Audible was particularly well done.
Okay.
The narrator really captures the grittiness of the world and the sarcasm of the narrator, of the main character. And it was just a fantastic novel. Imagine riding the world's best roller coaster.
Okay.
And it doesn't stop for 4 hours. And you get off that ride and you're like, I'm a little dizzy, but wow, what a ride.
Okay.
Best space opera story, Invincible by David Bruns, and a close second would be Chris Porto's Avenger.
Okay.
Wow.
And those take place in Nick Webb's Legacy Fleet world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have to know anything about that world in order to read their stories?
No, you can read it, and it's a rollicking story.
Okay.
And I'm sure there are some nods that I probably missed, but if you don't have that knowledge, you can still enjoy it on its own.
Okay.
As far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
And then the best horror story would be the Tales from the Canyons of the Damned, the Halloween edition. I believe it was number 10. You
told me that one was pretty rough to get through.
It was pretty rough. You don't want to read that one while you're eating.
Okay.
Because S. Eliot Brandis and Michael Patrick Hicks write 2 body horror stories.
Okay.
And boy, I was squirming in my seat.
Okay.
And I could almost feel my stomach going, man, stop reading this right now. You don't want to keep reading this. You don't want to know what's going to happen to you if you keep going.
Okay.
And then Sam Peralta's vampire story. Sam Peralta's poetry is beautiful. And I love the way he can take a line, he can take like a couple of lines of a story and fill them with so much meaning.
Mm-hmm.
He has a gift when it comes to that. And he translates that into a science fiction too. And this was a story about vampires, and it was a fantastic story. And then Daniel bats cleanup and brings it on home with a story of cultists that are attacked by demons. Top to bottom, fantastic collection.
Now, I don't know if I asked you to prepare this one. Do you have a favorite audiobook from this year that you listened to?
Ooh, wow. Favorite audiobook?
Yeah.
I really liked Michael Patrick Hicks's Revolver, which I listened to.
Okay.
The narrator is fantastic. It's a short story. I haven't written the review on Audible yet, but I will be.
Okay.
Time Heist was really fantastic. I would probably have to go through my list because I've gotten more into audiobooks this year.
Yeah.
And my audiobook list is quickly starting to approach the size of my reading book list.
Oh, wow. It's so easy, though, with the indie world because it's like you can buy the Kindle version and then for like an extra $2 or $3, you can add the Audible.
I really like Jessup's Door by Michael Bunker. That was a really good story. I listened to that recently. But I've definitely gotten more into audiobooks as a way to get more reading into my day.
Yeah. Before we let you run, is there anything any books in particular that you are looking forward to in 2017?
Oh my goodness! How much time you got? Let's see. Sam Peralta said that he's a full-time author now, so I'm looking to see anything that he's putting out there.
Yep, he's supposed to have his first novel coming out.
I want to read that.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the next few titles in the Future Chronicles series, especially Jurassic Chronicles, which sounds gonzo crazy, which means it's going to be a lot of fun, I'm sure.
I'm looking forward to the Illustrated Robot Chronicles.
Oh, I can't wait to see that. Holly Heisey is such a beautiful illustrator.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see what she did with the pictures in that book. And then let's see, whenever Anthony Vicino's sequel to Time Heist comes out, Risa Walker is doing the second book in her Delphi trilogy. She set up a really good world in the first one, and I can't wait to see her expand on it in the next story. And then I'm sure she'll just blow it all to pieces. She does really interesting stories and characters with her books.
Okay.
So the next one I'm sure is going to be good. And of course, this is kind of a cheat, but the Dominion Rising box set with 22 novels in it.
Yeah, that's supposed to be, I think, what Samuel Peralta's novel's supposed to be in.
Mm-hmm.
So
you got Ann Christie, Sam Peralta, Logan Snyder, P.K. Tyler, Daniel Arthur Smith, Patrice Fitzgerald, Tim Ward. These are all authors I read and enjoy.
Yeah.
So it's one book, but has 22 books in it. So I cheated.
Yeah. Well, that works.
I read Ann Christie's part of the box set called Portals.
Okay.
It's a really great story. Another one that really tickles the imagination.
Awesome.
And I can't wait to see what everybody else is putting in there.
I'm sure it's going to be just amazing. I can't wait till they put the pre-order up on Amazon. I know it's only on iTunes right now, so.
We still have, 7-8 months before it comes out?
It's like August, I think.
It's going to be a hard wait.
Yeah. I'm sure you'll feel the time, though.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, yes. I've already got several books on a backlist that I'm going to read as soon as I'm done reading the current reading and reviewing the current books that I'm doing.
Well, thank you for taking time out of your evening and coming on 30-minute author interviews. We appreciate it.
My pleasure, Preston.
Well, guys, that's all the time we've got for this episode. I hope you enjoyed getting to know the reviewers of the Leigendarium just a little bit better. And we hope you tune in next Wednesday and every Wednesday when we'll have a brand new author interview for you. And head on over to Leigendarium.com and check out the right side of the website. There you're going to see the different links to where you can subscribe to the podcast. If you would, head to your favorite one and rate and review it. It really helps the podcast get noticed by more viewers. And until next time, guys, we hope that you have a good one and always stay legendary. Oh, screwed that one up. Blooper reel.